I won't take very long. I will just share my thoughts from the legal perspective. I think Dennison spoke about the experiential perspective. I'll just give a short, simplified narrative of the constitutional and legal perspective as a posit for a lot of the problems in Malaysia. What as a posit for one of the main problems in Malaysia, because the constitution protects or promotes a certain type of racial discrimination in Malaysia. I'm not married and I don't intend to get married, so I don't have a heartwarming story about, you know, meeting and, so I have nothing to start off to, I'm not as lucky as Dennison. I just want to start by saying, if we all know, and I think human rights activists, and maybe some of you who are new to it, in 1945, of course, we know about the 45-48 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That really started the modern human rights movement. The modern human rights movement started because of the atrocities we saw perpetrated by Nazi Germany. And that was really about racial superiority, about trying to wipe out any other race apart from the Aryan race. So because of that, I think the world leaders and communities said we really need this charter. And then this charter, I think for the first time, spoke in no uncertain terms about racial, religious, discrimination being a prohibited category, and things like gender, political ideology. So I think that's, for the modern human rights movement, I think 45 started the UDHR, by the UDHR, then led on to different countries trying to implement it in different ways. Many were not successful, but we quickly jumped to 57. In 57, of course, we know about the Reid Commission. And when the Reid Commission actually sat down to discuss how we should draft our constitution, I think they had a lot of representations from different political parties, and they saw that there were different ethnic groups in Malaysia who were quite disparate in terms of economic progress. So they said, look, let's put in certain types of protection where you can bring up everyone to a same level for purposes of harmony, for purposes of the well-being of the whole country. So 57 in the Reid Commission report, basically they said that. And then they said things like, about 153, they said there should be a sunset clause. Sunset clause meaning if you put something in for special privileges for a certain ethnic group, it should not last for more than, I believe, 15, 20 years. So that was really part of the Reid Commission report. I think the intentions were well, and I think there was good faith in some of these things. However, when the actual constitution came out, that sunset clause was actually removed. So you now have this perennial discussion about Article 153, about Article 8. What Article 153 basically says, really, when you talk about it, and I think we've enlarged it too much, is that, first of all, it's entirely discretionary. It's not mandatory, meaning the government advising the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and the power is with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. The power is not with government. So we've got this misconception about the government actually being able to roll out all these things. Although the Yang di-Pertuan Agong acts on advice of government, the power under 153 actually rests only with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. That's the first point. It's discretionary, not mandatory. Second point is that it's extremely limited. The special protection for Malays and the natives of Sabah and Sarawak is extremely limited. So when we speak about 1531, 1531 gives an overall broad picture. And Dennison was right to actually mention that. But we must look at 1532, 3, 4, and 5, the sub-clauses, because there are only 3 main categories where what the Constitution calls special position is to be safeguarded. And these 3 positions, these 3 areas are limited in scope and limited in these terms. And I don't want to misquote the Constitution, but to break it up, it's only these 3 areas. The first area, A, is in a public service. So you can provide a certain quota for certain ethnic group in the public service, where they must either qualify and other ethnic groups cannot exceed the quota. The second B, the second group, is in terms of educational and training facilities. So it's very specific. Scholarships, exhibitions, I don't know what it meant. In 57, what did they mean? Exhibitions. I don't know what Malaysia had to do in 57 for exhibitions. But anyway, it says scholarship, exhibitions, education and training privileges, and special facilities. So in the education sphere, and I think the thinking was at that time was, let's try and improve this group in terms of empowering them with education, bring them up to a certain level. And the third area is, if permits and licenses are necessary for trade and business in Malaysia, then you can provide certain quotas for permits and licenses for those particular trades and businesses. That's all. There is no other constitutionally permissible category of any other thing apart from these categories. So whatever you can critique, whatever the government is doing, you can critique the government. If it's not within these three categories, it's unconstitutional. If it's not within these categories, it's unconstitutional. If it's not within these three main categories, 153 doesn't apply at all. And when 153 doesn't apply at all, there is no other reason, there is no under constitutional permission in the Constitution to allow these so-called special safeguards. And so when, and Dennis was right, when you look at political parties, when you look at different people speaking about these special rights, special safeguards, really it's all just political talk, you know, on both sides. And that's why we should all hate politicians. But really, yeah, so, and that's why we should take the power back. So these idiots are talking about 153 in those terms, but let us remember that is only in these three categories, and we should start writing about it. We should start talking about it because it's very, very limited. So first point, discretionary, not mandatory. Power is Yang Bertuan Agong on advice of the cabinet, and it's only, third point, it's only in these three categories. The equality provision, then I move on from 153, I move back to Article 8 of the Federal Constitution. Article 8 basically says all persons are equal before the law and entitled to equal protection of the law. Of course, those people who want to read Article 8 just read Article 8.1. They don't read other things. So Article 8.2 talks about the prohibition of racial, gender, descent, religious discrimination and other things. But these type of prohibited categories only apply very specifically, and this is a flaw in the Constitution, in terms of the appointment in employment or office to any public authority. So it's very, very specific. It's never been tested before until we took the case of the woman, the pregnant woman, temporary teacher who was sacked by the Ministry of Education for being pregnant. So we took that up and we brought it within Article 8.2, and for the first time, the Malaysian courts recognized CEDAW and recognized 8.2 and said that she was wrongfully dismissed because she was pregnant. So that, I think, was a very progressive judgment. The government is, of course, appealing it, but I think we will succeed if we are able to keep putting up the pressure against gender discrimination. So if you talk about equality, yes, everybody is equal, but specific categories of prohibition on racial discrimination only in terms of employment in public office. Then it goes on, Article 8.5 goes on to say that there are certain other things the Constitution allows you to do which breaches the equality rule. So one of it is about personal law. That would include Muslim law, Sharia law. So there is a separate set of rules under the Sharia system for Muslims. Then there's, of course, the protection, well-being, and people forget all this, protection, well-being, and advancement of the Aboriginal peoples of the Malay Peninsula. So the Orang Asal, the Orang Asli. And then, of course, other things which are quite complicated, but I'm not going to talk about it, about constitutional provisions pre-Merdeka. So whatever privileges you have pre-Merdeka continues post-Merdeka. But in terms, that really is a constitutional construct. The narrative of these issues on racial discrimination and the equality clause. So when we go for the discussions, I think tomorrow, and I've seen the program is quite packed, we should talk about it in those terms and see how far we have breached those terms, what are the parameters, where are the limits. Because that really is the constitutional perspective. I don't think there's anything else in detail which we should go into, except to say two things. we have to admit and accept that our federal constitution allows in certain categories for racial discrimination. So some people, I've written about this long time ago, and I'm just saying it again, and I hope people don't get angry. We have to admit and accept, everybody, that we have an ethnicized constitution. A constitution that is based on, in certain areas, ethnicity and social construct. So a Malay person, and I think I'm also a Malay person, I hope you all don't lynch me today, but I think a lot of us are also Malays. Because if you look at this construct in the constitution about being a Malay is actually a person who professes the religion of Islam, right? Some of us profess all religions, right? Because we believe in all the tenets. Secondly, a Malay is somebody who habitually speaks the Malay language. Kita selalu bercakap dalam bahasa Malaysia, although not very good lah, but habitually, and conforms to Malay custom, right? We go Hari Raya house, or we go to, people get married or what also, it's custom. I don't know, I'm not insulting, I'm just saying that this is a construct in a constitution. I still do not know why we had to put it in, and that's why a lot of religious conflicts that are happening in Malaysia, in terms of who is a Malay, who is a Muslim, happen because there is this type of construct. Whether you come within that category or not, are you a Malay? So in those terms, I move from 153 Article 8 to then this type of definition in the Constitution, who is a Malay. And that really is the legal narrative of the issues that we have to deal with. Ethnicized Constitution allows for certain categories of racial discrimination. Question is, what do we do about it? So yes, we can talk about one Malaysia. We can talk about the inequalities that are happening. Are these inequalities happening only enriching a certain class of people, making them richer? Do we need a Royal Commission of Inquiry to look at the Constitution and whether we need to review the Constitution to make sure that it is on par with our international human rights obligations? So ICERT, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, yes, I agree we should ratify it as soon as possible, but I disagree that there is little that we have to do with the Constitution. Because I believe once we ratify ICERT, like when we ratified CEDAW, we amended Article 8, when a Constitution has been amended 600 times. So again, when politicians say we can never amend the Constitution, it's nonsense. When we amended Article 8 to insert the CEDAW gender prohibition protection, we had no problems. We lauded it. Now when we ratify ICERT, to me there is certain forms of amendments that may be necessary legally to incorporate ICERT into our domestic law. So let's not run away from the fact that the exclusions in Article 8, the exclusions in Article, the protection of certain forms of discrimination in Article 153 may have to be amended. I'm choosing my words very carefully, just in case we get everybody in trouble. But the Sedition Act, again, of course, is, again, it's a tool, a fear tool, but let's remember that the Sedition Act allows you to question the implementation of 153, whether it's good or bad. You may not say whether 153 must go or should not go. That's why I use the words review, but the Sedition Act allows you to question its implementation. So you can talk about it. You can talk whether 153 and Article 8 is good or bad for the country. So you can talk about it. Okay, the final thing I want to say is that issues of racism do not have very much to do with anything else but race. So racism, of course, comes from the word race. And if we look at ourselves, you know, as Malaysians together, and we look at ourselves doing things together and being active in participation of public life as being a full citizen of Malaysia, working together, doing campaigns together, you know, even grouping together like this, I think we have a better future. So I know elections are coming soon. You know, it'll probably be the dirtiest elections ever. Let's try let's try and think beyond the elections. Let's try and move away from, Barisan Nasional or Pakatan, because they're all, they're all problematic. Let's try and find our own comfort zone where we are able to mobilize our own youngsters. And I think Nicole is speaking tomorrow on youth. You better question him. What he is going to do tomorrow to try, or all of us together, to try and bring together our people for one Malaysia to ensure that we enforce, implement human rights standards, make our leaders accountable, what we can do, whether by race or irrespective of race or religion. And we see that a lot. We see that among the youth a lot. I think they're all energetic, they're all guided, they want to do something, they just don't know where to go. So if you don't know where to go, you can go to Undi Malaysia. You can talk to Nicole. Sorry, I did a plug for that. Okay, thank you.